Hey, my name's Tony Byers. Uh, I guess this is my story. When I was about 3 years old, my mother gave me up because she was a heroin addict, and my grandmother and my grandfather, which was her mom and dad, raised me. My father never really had a part of my life. I never knew the man until I was about 15 years old. So, growing up, I had my grandma and my grandpa as a family structure, but I didn't have my mother and my father. And I never realized the effect that it really had on me until later on in life. So, growing up as a kid, I was a real good kid, honor roll student, all star athlete. I played in the band, in the orchestra, I was in the chorus and ensemble. There wasn't really much that I really didn't get into, and I think it was more or less to get the attention that I lacked from my mother and my father. So, there was a traumatic event that happened in my life. I was approximately 10 years old, 11 years old. And my uncle, my mom's brother, it was on a Thanksgiving day. I remember it plain as day. I was upstairs in my room and it was Thanksgiving evening and he never showed up for dinner. And that was one of the things that my family was big on. We all got together and we was all big on everybody getting together on the holidays. And this one occasion, he never showed up, and I found it odd. This man was like a mentor to me. He was a father figure in my life. He took me to my ball games, helped coach my ball teams, and I looked up to the man. He was the all-American dad. You thought he had his life together. He really good man. So I thought. I didn't know the underlying problems between him and his wife. However, he was drinking and driving, and he had a bad truck wreck. And at that point, he died 3 times before he made it to UC Hospital. And like I said, I was 12 years old when this happened. And he was in a coma for 7.5 to 10 weeks. I can't remember exactly. I was pretty young then. And my grandmother and my grandfather, all the attention that was basically given to me was kind of taken off of me in order to rehabilitate their son. Looking back now, I can see why, that's still their child. Even though I was their child, I don't think they seen the effect that that had on me. But around the age of 12, I started smoking cigarettes and started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And that's pretty much where it started. Wasn't that involved in baseball because I didn't have the backing that I should have from my family, or I felt that I should have from my family. And like I said, a lot of the attention was kicked off of me. And I grew up in Hamilton, Ohio, in the streets, and it was kind of rough. You had to fight in order to get by. And I became good at it. I boxed as a child, so I became pretty good at fighting, being in the streets and things. And not having my parents there was a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of hatred, and then a lot of hurt from not having the childhood that I see my buddies have. And my grandfather retired in 1994. I was 13 years old, and we moved to Brookville, Indiana. So I went from Hamilton, being this all-star athlete and having a good group of friends, being in the same schools, like to leave it to Beaver childhood. Pretty much, I had the same friends all the way through school until moved to high school, and went to high school and I made some people mad there. I come in shining on a football team and shining on the baseball team, and a lot of them guys didn't like it because just like me, they grew up together, they played ball together, so they kind of outcasted me as well. And with the hurt and the anger and everything that I had, I didn't take too much ridicule or being poked fun at too lightly. So I started fighting and I started acting out. My freshman year, I got suspended for fighting. It was the first fight they had in the band room of all places in probably 12 to 15 years is what my band teacher told me. He was really upset with me. And yeah, I got suspended. So there, it started spinning out of control from there. I got suspended, and the place that I lived at was a campground slash trailer park. It was out in the country, middle of nowhere, and I had a four-wheeler, a 22 rifle, and a 20 gauge shotgun, and a 17-mile lake to run. They pretty much let me do whatever I want. Of course, at this time, they was still taking care of my uncle, rehabilitating him. And that's something else I had to do as well. I had to take part of that. When I say rehabilitating him, I'm talking he was wearing a diaper in a hospital bed, couldn't walk. And a lot of the things that we had to do was teach him how to walk again, teach him how to talk again. He ended up brain damaged, blind, and it was just one of them things that I had to grow up real quick as a young man. And then at 13 years old, I didn't really have much guidance at that point because my grandfather was getting too old. He had emphysema and asthma. And my mother and my father still wasn't in my life as much. My mom tried to, but I had a lot of hatred towards her, so I kind of pushed her away. But being 13 years old, getting kicked out of school, my grandfather looked at me and told me, son, if you're not going to go to school, you're going to go to work. So I got in with a guy, and he taught me how to start building houses. Now I've been building houses for 28 years, and I'm not mad that he put me to work. Actually, I got a good trade, and I'm pretty good at what I do. However, I probably could have furthered my education or done something different with myself. But being on the job site at such a young age, these guys allowed me to smoke. They allowed me to cuss. And then every now and then I started drinking. I'd get a beer off of them and thinking I was cool, hanging out with the older guys. And then, my drinking started to get a little more excessive from a time of 13 to about 16, 17. I'll backtrack just a little bit. My sophomore year of high school, I got in 3 fights, so they expelled me. I lost all my second semester credits. And I thought, well, I'll just go back to work. And that's what I did. I went to work for the whole summer. So I was just thought, well, if I wasn't working, I was in school. So it was a win-win for me. I thought I was doing something productive. But work even became a problem later on in life. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So I went back my junior and senior year, and I graduated with a 3.85 just to prove the teachers that I could do it. It was spiteful on my end. It wasn't that I neglected knowledge or I was, didn't want to do the work or anything. It was just, I didn't like school. I didn't like the people I was with. I lost all my friends. I was trying to fit in, and I just didn't get along with everybody there. I didn't like the environment. So I acted out, and then my parents got on me. My grandfather got on me. He said, son, your education is important. And he kind of gave me an incentive. He said, he had a certain amount of money. He's going to give me $5,000 if I graduated. And as a young man, I thought, well, $5,000 is going to get me somewhere. And we know today's society, it ain't really much of nothing. But that incentive kind of pushed me. So I went back, graduated with a 3.8. My senior year, I blew right through it like it wasn't nothing. And then it come about 17 years old when I graduated high school. I signed up for the military and had the recruiting officer come to the house. And being that I was underage, my grandfather had to sign the paper being that he was my legal guardian, but he refused to. And he told me, he said, son, I need you at home. And I didn't understand why. But helping take care of my uncle all the years, it taught me a lot of family values of taking care of your family. And it wasn't long after that, my grandfather got sick and had emphysema and asthma. And he got sent home on hospice to die. And they said he only had, 3 weeks or something like that was around the time frame. So I stayed by this man's bedside, and me being an alcoholic, became an alcoholic and drinking, smoking pot, and just being unruly, being a young man, working and being around that construction crowd. And being angry at the world and everything else. And then my grandfather being sick on top of it. I kind of felt backed in the corner, and I really started acting out about that time. And then he just looked at me one day and he said, we can't take it no more, son. He said, you're going to have to figure something out, and asked me how much money I had. And he helped me along the way. And then my mother stepped in and helped me. And he wanted me to stay close to home so I could help take care of him. The man looked at me and said, me and God's got something figured out. Now, I was raised in church with my grandmother and my grandfather. In and out, as much as what a young man will absorb. And when he told me, he said, me and God got something figured out. Me as a teenage boy, I was like, okay, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So I got a trailer up the road. My mom helped me get this, and 17 years old. I'm out on my own. Got a good job, making good money. And it wasn't long after that, man. My grandfather became better. We was lifting soup cans, and I mean that's how weak he was. And it was little Campbell soup cans. I'll never forget it. And them nurses looked at me and said, "Have you ever thought about taking up nursing?" I said, "Nope, not my cup of tea. Not for me. I'm more of a builder type guy. I like working with my hands." So 17 years old, I was on my own, working, like I said, making good money. And it was a party every weekend at my house. A lot of my guys were still in high school, so they'd come out to the house, and I had the party spot. I had my own place, and I had the woman that I wanted. I had pretty much everything that I wanted at that point as a young man. A good job, beautiful woman, a lot of friends, and I gained that crowd. So I started selling pot, and then the crowd became bigger, started making money, started making more money, got arrogant, got bold with it, and didn't really care too much. And then day come, I got in trouble. Some girl wore a wire on me and got me in trouble. And that was my first offense as far as felony. I had a couple DUIs prior to that. And like my grandmother and grandfather, they just always bonded me out and kind of coddled to me. And I was pretty much spoiled, when it came to that. But caught my first felony, and I was looking at some time. They give me a pretrial diversion, is what they call it, where you pay a little time and then, or pay a little money, and they just put the time on the shelf. And I didn't. It was more a slap on the wrist, so it didn't really have no repercussions from it. So it really didn't affect me much. And about the time I was 21 years old, I had my daughter. Now this time, like I said, I have been on my own. I've been taking care of my grandmother, my grandfather, taking care of my uncle, working. Big man, thought I had it all figured out. Wasn't very nice to the woman that I loved. Me and her had a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, and it really wasn't a healthy environment. And we thought that the baby would probably bring us closer together. And we decided that we wanted to have a child. And for a while, it went good. And then when I was 21 years old, my daughter was born. And it kind of worked out weird. And this is where it kind of took a turn for me. When my daughter was born, she was born October 12th of 2002. And I started getting more into family then. It did change me for a while. And I started going to church off and on. I was just getting my feet in, dipping my toes in the water. And my grandfather, he kind of started looking at me differently. And it kind of made me feel proud, that I was doing something to make him proud. And this is like, just starting to get in touch with what God's got in store for me, which we never know what he's really got in store for us. And like I said, she was born October 12th. Well, come December, my grandfather asked me, said they was having a revival in New Miami, Ohio, at a church that was his home church in Ohio. And he asked me if I'd go with him. And at the time I was waiting on something to come in. And I was like, nah, Dad, I can't do it. And I always called my grandfather Dad. That's all I knew was my dad. I said, I can't do it. And he said, well, that stuff's going to get you in trouble one day, boy. He said, I wish you'd go to church with me tonight. And I said, I can't do it. He said, all right, well, I love you. Well, later that night, it was December 3rd. Like I said, my daughter's born on October 12th. And December 3rd, I got a phone call that night saying my grandpa passed away in church. And it was, I didn't realize it then, but I look back now and I say, this man looked at me and said, me and God's got something worked out. And 3 years later, I'm sorry, he dies in church. Now, that's just not no coincidence. I didn't see it then, and I didn't grasp it then. But it turned me away from God at that point. I had a lot of bitterness and a lot of hatred towards God at that point. And I started using again, started drinking again, started acting crazy again, getting even more wild. spun me off into my addiction a little even further. And I started using cocaine. And cocaine, and I'm the type of individual, I can't do just a little. I gotta go to the max, to the extreme on everything. And it wasn't that I want to pay for my habit. I'm gonna get enough and sell it to let everybody else pay for my habit. Make a little money on top of it. Plus I get a whole different crowd. So the one that I lost, I replaced with a lot of other ones. And my grandmother was still living in Indiana, and my uncle was still living in Indiana. And the family that I had in Ohio, her children, had coerced her into moving. So when she moved, that even just kind of, I felt like I was left all over again by my mom and my dad. It was just like, now y'all just pick up and run off and leave me. So therefore, the abandonment, the rejection, and just the hurt came puddling in, man. And there wasn't nothing I could do to stop it. And so I started spinning out of control, and wasn't long. I caught another DUI, which was number 3. And that didn't even stop me. I caught another felony. I think I got in a fight that night. I've been to prison 8 different times, so I couldn't tell you where all of them are, but I could tell you how it all came about. So my first time in prison, it was for an assault charge. I hit a guy with a hammer who went through my yard on a bobcat, and it wasn't long after the family moved. I think it was that summer. And I was just mad, man. I was just mad at the world and hurt on everything. It just tore me apart. And not having my grandfather there to kind of talk me down or to give me the guidance, I just felt lost and alone in life. But I was still working. So working, working's normal. And if you got a job, everything's okay. I'm holding the job down, hiring a kite every day, drunk every night when I come home, fighting with the old lady. Bills are paid, but I was a functioning addict, so I didn't really think that I had a problem. But over the years, going back to prison, the second time I went to prison, I thought, well, I got to change it. And there ain't no other way to change it but through God, is what I thought. So I got back going to church and tried to give myself to the Lord again. Tried to put Lord in my heart. I can't say give myself to the Lord because I never really submitted or surrendered. But I put God in my heart, and I was doing it for show for everybody else. I did it in vain. And did it for the old lady. I did it for the kids. I did it for my grandmother. I did it for my mom. I did it for my dad. Well, my second time in prison, my mom kind of stepped up and held me down, I guess, as you could say, sent me money on my commissary, took care of the home front for me, made sure the kids didn't go without. And I think Sherry was pregnant with my second child at this time. And then I get out, and I'm out for 6 or 7 months, and I end up going back for a third time. But a third time that I'm in there, she just had him. And by the time I got out, the first time I ever seen him take his first steps for me was when I was getting out of prison. Here he come walking to me, waddling. And I cried my eyes out, and I thought, I'm done with it. And I did what any man should do, take care of their family at all costs. And that's what I felt. At all costs. It didn't matter how much it hurt me. It didn't matter how much it hurt her. We were staying together no matter how much turmoil we caused between each other, how toxic it was for the kids or anything about it. It was all about her and the kids. And I started hiding my addiction again, got back to work. I went right back to work again. Didn't take no time for myself. Didn't take no time to get no plan together, no nothing. So I go back to work and I start drinking again and hiding it, and she finds out about it, and then next thing you know, me and her split up. So I thought she leaves and takes the kids, and I thought, well, you know what? That's rejection, abandonment all over again. It hit me again. So I started going crazy again, and we decided we was going to work things out. It's been off and on for 29 years is what we went through total. So it was off and on again. This time when we got back on, we thought we'd both go back to church. Well, we go back to church, and next thing you know, my dad, me and him started building a relationship when I was about 18, 19 years old, my biological father, but it wasn't on them terms. He sold pot. So I went and seen him during prom. He gave me some weed, and I go see him to get some weed and this and that. Well, then I thought, well, I'm gonna give him a chance to be a part of my kid's life. So he started getting involved in my kids' life when my son was about 1 or 2, and I was just starting to get back into church. So I was still smoking pot, going to church, thinking that it's okay. I'll be all right. I'm not doing the other stuff. No cocaine, no meth, no none of the other stuff. I quit drinking because apparently I had a drinking problem because every time I get drunk, I break out in handcuffs. So uh, started hanging out with my dad. Well, come to find out, my dad had cancer, had kidney cancer, and like I said, I'm giving myself to the Lord, or supposedly give myself to the Lord again. And it seemed like every time that I would get close to God or start going to church, somebody in my family, somebody who was close to me, started getting sick. And this time it was my father and my dad. And we spent a little time together, 6, 7 months together. We went on a trip together once. And come time, he even planned his own funeral. He knew it was coming. But it was weird. When this man died, I didn't shed a tear. I don't know if it was because I bottled it up or I just really didn't care. And I think it was just a cold heart. I done lost the man that I did care about, which was the man who raised me. So this one didn't affect me as bad. And losing him, he kind of set me up a little bit. He left me some money, and I was able to pay off some things and ended up buying a house and bought me a truck, and I started my own company. And after losing him, I just kind of used that as an excuse to lean post to start dabbling again. And then once again, I made the old lady mad. Me and her started fighting again, and then I even caused her to backslide. She even come on and wanted to start going out and drinking and this and that with me, which that wasn't no good. I influenced that, and I feel really terrible for a lot of that. But long story short, I ended up back in prison again for number 4. Another DUI, another assault charge, another battery charge, and missed out on a lot of my kids' life because of it. So I get out this time and I'm like, well, I'm definitely not doing it again. Lied to everybody. I lied to myself in the process, and got out and tried to use church as a leaning post again. And thought, well, I got it all figured out now. I'm living my life for Jesus, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I started playing the guitar in church and started getting more involved in church. And then behind closed doors, I'm angry as it gets, sneaking, smoking weed, sneaking, doing this and that, hiding it from everybody. And I get found out again. So she ends up leaving again. And I spawn out of control, and I'm back in prison for the 5th time. Another fight. This time I just tried to kill myself. I got in called an F2 felonious assault, about killed a guy in Ohio. Beating, I blacked out, and I just kept hitting him, and I beat him pretty bad. And on the way home from Ohio, I was coming up Harrison out of 52 in Indiana, and jumped my car off a cliff and hit a tree on it, 70 mile an hour head on. And motor lay in the passenger seat of the car, but I didn't have a scratch on me. I thought, man, I can't even do this right. Didn't even spill my beer. And I got out, popped open the beer, jumped on the hood of the car, and I just laid there, unplugged the horn, just laid there at the stars, just like thinking, Lord, help me. Here I go again down the same rabbit hole. And I kind of compare it to the story of Jonah. When you got a plan in life and you don't follow through with it, and you're disobedient to what God's called you to do, you get swallowed up by that big fish, and you get put right back in the same spot where he started on you at, until he makes that call right, until you're obedient to that call. Well, this time getting out and moving forward with life, thought, man, I got to figure it out. I didn't even go to church this time. And then it slowly ended in my grandmother, she started getting sick on me. And she's like, honey, will you take me to church? And kind of opened that door, and I went into church. And when I did it, something felt different. I thought it really clicked with me, and started living life differently. Every Sunday was dedicated to taking grandma and the kids and her, the old lady, to church, taking care of grandma's house. It was work all week. make sure grandma's taken care of, make sure the house is taken care of, sober. And I was sober, smoking cigarettes, but I was sober. And I got a call one day at work. My grandma got sick and she had an abdominal aneurysm and they had to put a stent in. Well, the intestines are wrapped around this stent. And long story short, she was bleeding from the inside out and she was too weak to go through the surgery. The doctor literally told me, he said, she's skating on ice and praying for cold weather. Said, if you believe, you better pray. And that was just weird that a doctor told me that. And so at the time, I had my mother was in the hospital with a congestive heart failure. I had an uncle who was in the hospital at the time in the ICU for something to do with a heart trauma. I had another uncle in Mississippi where my mom lived, but my mom had just came up to see us. So I'm pulling everybody in every direction. I sent my uncle a plane ticket to come up here. I went and got my other uncle that was handicapped. I brought him up to the hospital. I got my grandmother's son, Rick. I got him into the hospital out of the heart unit. I got my mom out of the ICU and got them all together in the waiting room. And it was just a big ruckus. And I was one of them guys, when I get thrown in the midst of chaos, I keep a calm and keep everything together. And I tried to keep my family together after my grandfather passed away. I stepped up and was trying to be the man to put everything together for everybody. And I was the one, the go-to guy. And got everybody in the waiting room and I left. I went straight to the sanctuary and I hit my knees and I prayed. And I prayed to the Lord and I said, Lord, I was down there for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. I was waiting on my other uncle to fly in. And my only prayer was, Lord, bring her out of the surgery alive. And I picked my uncle up from the airport and we come there and my grandmother made it out of the surgery. They had her on life support. And being blocked by my own thoughts and my own way and my own understanding on the way prayers should be answered or everything, I thought she was going to be okay. But looking back, God answered my prayers. He brought her out of that surgery alive, like I asked. But got to the point to where my aunt ended up pulling the plug and my grandmother lived for 20 minutes even after that. And there wasn't nothing I could do to get her put back on life support. The family had made a decision. So I got really hateful, really angry with them. And then when I lost my grandmother, it was like losing my mother. Like that woman raised me and I thought, I mean, their son rose and set on her hind end. There wasn't nothing that I would never do for her. I even put her before my own family. And which was wrong of me then too. And that caused a lot of problems too. But she ended up passing away. And once again, I became bitter and angry at God. I cussed God and everything. And the night that she passed away, it was the night that we buried her. It was the night that we buried her. I had come home and I went straight to the bar and I went straight back to drinking, straight acting a fool. And I had this big old truck. So I started ripping donuts in the driveway, leaving the bar, acting stupid. And somebody called on me and followed me home and got me a block away from my house for my 7th DUI. And had to do some time over that. Thank God it wasn't prison that time. But if you don't see the pattern here, it was a tragic event, led me right back into my addiction, right back into prison. Like I said, I was been 6th or 7th time in prison that time. And I got out and I started going back to church, lost my other grandmother, went right back down the same rabbit hole. But this time here, I went to a therapeutic community in Chillicothe, Ohio. I did a 2-year program there. I got sentenced to 2 years for retaliation on an officer. I was at a bar and the cop that arrested me once before, I seen him there and I just had my way with him. That's all there was to it. I was angry, mad, and I was already lost everything again by this point, and I really didn't care. So I let him talk a little bit, and I just egged it on a little bit, and I stayed sober for the most part. And I antagonized him out in the parking lot, and vengeance, revenge, hatefulness. It was a way to let my anger out. And I went and did this therapeutic community in Chillicothe for 2 years. And opened my eyes to a lot of my own problems, being more accountable for my actions and the acknowledgement of what I had done and the pain that I had caused in my family. So at that point in my life, I said, okay, I really am done. And I was, but I wasn't using God as a crutch. I wasn't using God. I wasn't using church. I wasn't using none of that. This time I was using the literature that I learned. And that's even more manipulative sometimes than it is using God as a crutch. You know, you can fake things behind closed doors or in front of people, but behind closed doors really shows true character. It shows your integrity. And knowing the knowledge and things, I could fire the words back at them. No, I'm a functioning alcoholic. I was. I'm no longer that. I won't be bound by these names. And you know, I had the words for it for sure. I definitely put on the show. But I got out of Chillicothe and I started down the right path for the longest time, and then it got to a point where I needed my license to get to work, and it was frustrating because after 7 DUIs in 3 different states, it wasn't giving me my license back at all, no way, shape, or form, and 28 driving under suspensions. So I was like, well, you know what? Forget it. I got to work. I'm going to go ahead and get me a vehicle, which I bought me a cheap van. Like, I paid like $1,200, $1,500 for it or something like that. And I went to work. Next thing you know, get pulled over, caught another driving under suspension. This time in Indiana, it's a habitual traffic offender. It's a felony. And I do not know how I was going to church and at Higher Praise over here in Connersville, Indiana. I was going to church there. I don't know how to this day, other than God having intervention in this, but I had a felony 6, and I go in there, and this judge looks at me and says, why don't you have your license? I said, I don't know. Could you tell me why I don't have my license? I've tried everywhere in the world. I said, I had them at one point, and then you guys took them from me again, and I can't get an explanation on how to get it. And being naive to the system of how to use the system productively and use the resources within the system, I was that convict mentality of I'm the victim. I'm just a victim of bad circumstances. There's no help out there for me. Being I'm a violent offender, I can't find a job. I can't do this. So I always ended up doing the same stupid stuff. And that judge looked at me and says, well, ask the prosecutor, said, do you know why his license is suspended? She says, Your Honor, really, I can't tell you. He said, well, we're going to suspend this for 2 weeks, and I want you to go get your driving records. So I went and did the little process of everything that he asked me to do, went to the BMV and everything. And it was a struggle trying to figure it all out. I got to run around a lot. But I finally got the paperwork that I needed to prove, like, there was a spot in there where I had my license back, and they still got me for driving under suspension. So I ended up walking out of an F6 looking at a year minimum time of with a $9.50 fine, and they never come about anything else. It was $9.50, and I thought, well, thank you, Lord. You know, my pastor and them had kind of advocated for me and reached out to a couple lawyers and things, and they kind of stuck their neck out there for me. And even then, I didn't stop. Like, yeah, it should have been an eye opener right there, and to proceed to go do what I needed to do to get my license and take legal steps. But I didn't. And it came around 4th of July. I had a little bit of money put back from where I had been working, and things were going pretty good around the home front with the old lady and the kids. And I had a 4th of July party, a clean and sober 4th of July party. Had my little cousin that lived here in town come up. I ain't seen him in a while. And I had a bunch of family around me. And my mom's birthday was July 14th. And my mom had been in my life through my whole prison rip, man. Like, she held me down every time I went to prison. I got the affection, I got the love, I got that attention from my mother, like, when I needed it in the prison, like, but I needed it when I was out on the street. But I think that come into play later in my life. But long story short, we had big fireworks and big display, and I looked at Sherry and I told her, I said, get me a Suburban. I want to go down to Mississippi and see my mother. July 14th was her birthday. So we had it set up to where I took her and the kids, and we just showed up at my mom's doorstep on July 14th. And my mom was a big girl. She kind of, you hear her stomping through her little trailer. Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby. And it brought joy to my heart. Like, she seen that I was living good and I was living right. I was going to church, and I had a slip up with driving under suspension, but I didn't get no drugs. There wasn't no DUI. There wasn't nothing, and I minimized it. Even though that I dodged an F6, I minimized it because I got a slap on the wrist and there really wasn't no repercussions. So I didn't care. I rented a Suburban, drove from here to Mississippi, and had my family along the way. Like, put them in jeopardy and everything else. Now looking back, it's foolish. But we get down to Mississippi, and my mom, on her birthday, and it was this time I took the time and actually made amends with my mother. Uh, we had a long talk, and there was a lot of forgiveness there. There was a lot of crying, a lot of love that was shown on them days that I was down there. A lot of love that was shown on them days. And I think she found some peace within that. And I sent her and the kids and everybody out for a little while, go shopping, running around. It was her birthday. You go out, spend some time with the kids. And she had a little trailer that was a deck that was on her trailer that was falling apart. And I had fixed it, made it bigger, and put new handrails up and just redid the whole deck for by the time she got back that day. And she come in, she was blown away. Like, she's like, oh, she just having a fit. And it wasn't completely done because she had emphysema and COPD, and she had this little scooter. And I didn't have the ramp put on the scooter, but it came time that I had to get back. I had a job I had to go take care of. Work's always been a number one for me. I was always before family. I was before everything. And I always taught that a man's supposed to work. And even in the Bible, it tells you a man works for, it's supposed to work. And so therefore, my work became an addiction. Wasn't drinking, wasn't smoking dope, wasn't doing nothing. My work became my addiction. Buried myself in it. And told my mother, I said, I'll be down in a couple weeks and we'll put the wheelchair ramp on for you. Me and my son will come back down. Well, it come about 2-3 weeks later, I think it was 3 weeks later, something like that. I called her and I told her, I said, well, I'm coming down next weekend. And she said, okay. And the whole time I was down there talking to her, she was like, if anything happens to me, I'm sending you a bank card for my bank account. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So she knew something was wrong. She didn't tell me what it was. However, me living a good life, going to church with the kids, being sober, being productive in society, doing what I'm supposed to do as a man. This time, like, legitimately doing what I'm supposed to do as a man. My mother found peace in all that. So July 14th, I'm down there. I leave about the 18th. And August 3rd, I get a phone call saying my mom passed away. And that one broke me. But I didn't run from my faith. I didn't go driving myself into the addiction. I didn't do none of that. I had a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, and I was confused because of all the people that I had lost along the way. Every time I give myself to the Lord and get close to the Lord, I'd lose somebody. It seemed that way. It wasn't that he was just taking them from me or nothing, but I honestly think now, looking back, they seen that troubled child living a good life, and they got some freedom within themselves to say, okay, now I can let go. Now I can be sick. Now I can be this. And I think the good Lord called them home. I think they allowed it to happen in their life. They become at peace with what they was going through instead of hanging on and fighting just to say baby boy. I was the only child growing up, so I didn't have no siblings growing up. I had 2 half brothers I barely even knew. And still don't talk to them till this day. But when I lost my mom, it really broke me down. And we had to go back down to Mississippi, and there were some things that went on down there. And like when she passed away, it took it out of me, and I went straight to the meth. Grabbed me, an 8-ball, got high as a kite, and out of my mind. Just tried not to feel nothing for a while. And I thought, man, I just made amends with her. I just made peace with her, and it didn't make no sense to me. So me, the old lady and the kids take off. We go back down there, and on the way down there, here I arguing and fighting with them the whole way, and I'm high out of my mind, not knowing what's going on really. And I mean, I just, it was a big mess, man. Then when we got down there, I had found out some things that her old man had got some money, and it just spun out of control. And then my anger and everything just spun out of control. And I'm trying to fight my uncle. I'm trying to fight her old man. I'm trying to fight the neighbors around me. I'm acting a fool. I mean, like literally acting stupid. And the old lady said, in her mind, she had it fixed that she was done. So on the way back from burying my mother, I'm coming up 40, and 40 splits off. You can go to Arkansas or you can go off to Memphis. And we had come through Memphis, and I'm veering off towards Memphis, and she takes off left to Arkansas with the kids. And right at that split, she kind of veered off. She knew that was the only way to get away from me. And she told me, she said, don't come home. Don't come home. I can't take it no more. So needless to say, I went buck wild, man. I mean, I went wild as it gets. I started running with Machine Gun Kelly and his following, literally partying with rock stars, acting crazy, jumping out of airplanes, doing stuff I never thought I would have ever done in my life. Stayed high, still tried to work, still worked, held it down working. But it was just the pain and the hurt. And by this time, I'm on parole. I violated my parole, so I got warrants out for my arrest at this point. I'm back on the meth heavy. I'm back to selling it heavy. I'm back to doing everything that I shouldn't be doing. And I violated my parole, and they sent me down to River City on another behavior program, a CBT program. Well, in there, I get a whole recap of what I went through in the therapeutic community, except this time I actually started to apply it. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna do what I got to do. I'm gonna put in the work, and I did. I put in all the work that I needed to do, and at that point, I got talking to Sherry and the kids again, and they accepted me despite everything that I put them through all the years, all the pure hell and torment and abusiveness, the fighting, the arguing, everything. She accepted me again. And she helped me out through the River City program. And I come home thinking I was a changed man, thinking everything was going to be all right. And the womanizing and the things like that didn't stop. And she caught on to it. But I wasn't stepping out. I was still talking to women. And I wasn't stepping out. I didn't do none of that. And I wasn't using. I wasn't doing none of that. I was working. I was catching a ride back and forth. I was doing everything that I needed to do the right way. And I had burnt that bridge with her so many times that she couldn't forgive me. And she was insecure by my actions and what I did. I created that insecurity within her of not trusting me, not believing me, and not giving me a full fair shot at it. There was no forgiveness there. She was holding on to all the bitterness, which she had every right to, because this has been 8 different prison rips in 2 different states. I don't know how many county jail bits. I don't know how many work release bits. And she had had enough. And despite the fact coming home and everything else, and I came home in September or something like that, around December, I seen everything falling apart, and the holidays were never really good for me because that's when my family started falling apart. So Thanksgiving, I kind of seen everything start to fall apart, and I was like, you know what, forget it. It doesn't matter if I do good or if I don't do good. I don't get accepted either way. I'm still looking for that acceptance, still looking for my family, still looking for that everything else, and I wasn't getting it. So I started sneaking and using again. Well, she found out about that. I come home one night, she gave me a drug test. I come home drinking. and she gave me a drug test on top of it. So I definitely wasn't going to take it because I was failing for methamphetamines. So she told me she's done, kicked me out. So I leave. At this point, I'm homeless, broke, and I'm working on a house over in Fairfield, Ohio. And the guy that I'm working for, I had the whole back of the house tore off. And I kind of put tarps over the back of it and stayed in the basement, built me a little bed in the basement, and put a kerosene heater down there. And I stayed down there until I got enough money to get me a place. Well, parole's on my hind end about everything, saying, well, where are you staying at? I didn't have a place to stay. And he said, well, you need to be here in Indiana. So my big bright idea was, I'm going to go get a house right across from her and the kids. And that's what I did. I got a place right across the street from them so I could sit and watch my life just go by. I straightened up, and at this time I got a guy working with me, and me and him both using, but he was using heroin. And I got him off the heroin, but we're heavy into the meth. One's just as bad as the other. And like being that my mother gave me up for adoption when I was 3 because she was a heroin addict, I had my personal demons, and I always looked at a heroin addict as scum. I never understood that addiction. But I went through that part with the mother of my children. She ended up getting on heroin, and that kind of spun me out of control too. And to see her go through that and to put me through having to take care of the kids and everything. But when I seen it grab a hold of her, I found out that it doesn't make, it's a demon. It definitely grabs a hold of you, and you're somebody that you ain't. So that also allowed me to help forgive my mother. But when I moved back over here and I was so far into my meth addiction, like I was trying to help everybody who was on heroin get off of heroin by using meth. And I ended up getting so bad on that stuff, man. It was just like, I forgot who I was. But being that I have been in prison so many times and found refuge in prison in the system, I was institutionalized, so to speak. I'm sitting around June, July of that year, and I'm sitting there like, man, I will be so much better in prison. And I mean, who really thinks that way? Who really does? But my world was falling apart because I wouldn't quit the addiction. I wouldn't quit using. I caught another case for driving. Ended up catching the case for possession because they came in my house and found methamphetamines in my house. Caught a case for that. Then this guy had, my daughter was dating. My kids were grown by this point, and this guy my daughter was dating kind of did her wrong, and they accused me of stealing a motorcycle allegedly. And so I'm looking at a theft charge. And then I had this people I let in my house stay there. I mean, of course, I'm in the meth addiction, and I allow these people to stay at my house from time to time. But I came home one night, and he had my door wide open after I had my door locked. And I didn't like that too much. And I approached him to see what he was getting in his car or putting in his car. And he took a swing at me. And when he did, I hit him, and then I go inside. He calls the law on me. So they come in the house, and they got me. They took me to jail. The guys that I'm working for, they come and bonded me out twice during this time. So I caught 4 different charges in a matter of about 6 months. Spiraling out of control, really not caring. Just can't wait to go to prison and get it over with. I'm working down in Brown County, Ohio, and I get pulled over. I was staying in my van because I was on the run. And so when I get pulled over, I got a bunch of dope on me, and I hide it. And I'm trying to outrun them in a van that just only got low gear because I just burnt the transmission out of it. That's how bad I was. And broke, but I had dope and I had work. And anyway, they picked me up down there, and they said I had a warrant in Westchester, or Warren County. So they take me to Warren County. Warren County drops the charges that they had on me for the warrant, but my parole picks it up because they found all the charges over here in Indiana. So they sent me up 7 months at, I was at Lorain Penitentiary, and then I went to Lake Erie Penitentiary. When I was in Lorain Penitentiary, there was a group in there called Grace Baptist, and this church is out of Columbus area. And there was a guy in there, Scott Lessing, and something just drew me to this guy, and they had a lot of interaction within the prison. They have actually a office within the prison. And I never seen anything like that through the prison system, through all 8 different penitentiaries that I've been to. Never seen anything like that till this day. But the impact that that place had on the people in there was such a big difference. Like, you seen the whole environment of people who was participating with them and interacting with them was different, and I wanted it. Well, this time my mother wasn't there. So I kind of struggled a little bit with everything. The mother of my children even was like, hey, I got you. I'm going to hold you down. And she did. She helped me out, sent me money here and there. I was getting money from other people, my friends and things, calling them, manipulating. Look, I need some money. I need this and I need that. When really, in all fact, I didn't need any of it. I take money, and it was just a hustle at that point. I started a store in prison, and I started hustling food because I couldn't hustle drugs. I couldn't hustle nothing in there. And I always wanted to come up. There was never enough. I couldn't never have enough. And I'm sitting in there this time, and I started going to these classes. I started going to these Bible studies. I started going to these services. And basically it was because that's all we could do. There really wasn't much to do. And it was the round time frame was around winter time. So you wasn't allowed out in the yard. And the way this place was set up, all you had was cards, working out, church, or these little programs. And these little programs were all faith-based. So I started going to them. I started getting into it. And then the Lord hit me one day. He said, I promise you, I'll restore your family, but you will serve me. And I wanted so much for my family to be put back together that I said, okay. He said, but you're going to do it on my terms, my way. I never took orders well from anybody, especially from something I couldn't see. But when he hit me, I hit my knees. And I said, okay, Lord, I'll serve you with all of me. And I did something I never thought I would ever do. And I said I didn't want that jailhouse religion. But when I didn't give myself to the Lord. The Lord found me where I was in my darkest time. Alone, in prison, with nobody, nothing. And when he found me this time, he made a promise to me. He told me he's going to restore everything. He's going to restore my family. And I hold tight to that promise to this day. So I started serving him, and I did that unthinkable thing. I got baptized while I was in prison. The moment I got baptized, everybody's like, oh, boy, do you feel different? No, I don't feel different. A couple days went by, a couple weeks went by, and I said, you know what? I feel stronger. I feel more clean. I feel like I got a purpose. And being that I'm musically inclined, I grabbed a guitar and I tried out for the worship team there. And tried out, and I was playing this song, Less Like Me by Zach Williams. Well, the guys that was in the prison wasn't really country based, if that makes sense. That wasn't their cup of tea. However, this Grace Baptist Church guy, as soon as they let me on and let me come start playing and everything, like 3 days later, one of the guys that was with Grace Church says, hey, could you guys play this song? And our director, he grabbed it and he just started laughing. He shook his head. And I said, well, what is it? What is it? And sure enough, it was Less Like Me by Zach Williams. And that song hits me at home because it's I want to be more like Jesus and less like me. So we rehearsed it, and them guys let me play it. So I'm singing and playing in front of the whole prison, like 3 different shows, And I'm thinking, like, man, this is something that I never thought I'd be doing. I thought, thank you, Lord. And I kept on. Well, being in the prison system, not everybody's living that clean lifestyle. Well, our choir director gets in trouble when he gets sent off to the hole. And there's nobody there to run it. And one of the guys come up to me from Grace, and he's like, hey, you, I've heard you sing. I heard you play that guitar. You know these songs. Come on up here. And they put me right up in the front. I thought, well, okay, here we go. So I took off with it, and I'm leading worship up there for about 3 weeks. And then the Lord just puts it on my heart and says, hey, it goes further than this. I need you to announce your faith. So I go up in the dorm where I'm at, And I stand on the top range and I throw my hands up. I say, hey, hey, yelling at everybody. And they all got quiet. They all look up and I said, listen, I just like to announce one thing, guys. I said, I'm trying to change my life. I'm trying to live my life differently. And I want to offer prayer to any man that needs it in here. At 6:30, I'm going to start a prayer circle over here. Well, I started that prayer circle and it started out with 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. And it grew to about 30. I mean, we had every ethnic background, every gangbanger, thug, you know, it was gangs, it was everything. Every type of person you could think of was in this circle. And my lieutenant of our dorm calls me in his office like about 2 weeks after it's going on. He says, hey, man, I'm going to have to tell you, you got to stop this. I'm like, I could play cards with 10 or 12 guys, but I can't pray with 10 or 12 guys. He said, it's a group gathering. It's against the rules. I said, if the Muslims can gather to pray at night, why can't a Christian gather to pray at night? Don't make no sense to me. Well, there's a place of worship for that. I said, well, then open up the place of worship so I can take the guys and go up there. About another 2 or 3 weeks go by, and they called me in there again. This time they got the warden in there. And the warden said, I thought you was told to stop that. I said, I don't have control over what the Holy Spirit does. I said, all I did was plant a seed. Even if I'm not there, them guys still get together and pray. That's not nothing I can control. So I'm becoming more bold, more out there fighting that fight as a soldier of the Lord, you know what I mean? That's what he calls us to be. And I'm staying in my word, diligently reading. I'm leading the worship team. I'm leading prayer in the dorm. I even got it to where we ain't even linked up to no more. I got the guys going around 2 by 2, talking with one another, reaching out to the next one. The lieutenant calls me in the office again. He says, Byers, I'm going to need you to quit, man. I said, I ain't got nothing to do with it. And he said, I will tell you this. He says, I am a believer, and I would allow this to go on. He said, but I'm going to tell you this, too. You can see the difference that it's made in our dorm. There's less fights in here. There's less trouble in here. We don't have no smoking going on in here. We don't have these things going on in here. He says, what you're doing is making a difference, but I got to put a stop to it from higher authority. I said, well, I can't put a stop to it due to higher authority. I don't know what you want to tell me. Like, that night, they come and they said, Byers, box it up. I thought, well, what's going on? They send me all the way up to the northeastern corner of Ohio, Lake Erie. They got me out there as quick as they could. I thought, well, what do I do up here? Now I have to start it all over again. And you go up there, and it's pretty much gangland up there. So I'm up there trying to get me a plan together as to what my next move is, and being uprooted from one place to another, and having to restart my bid all over, and then try to figure out where I'm going when I get out and all this other stuff. Well, come time to where I'm getting out, and I got a little plan together. I figure I'm going to go stay with this person. I got a job lined up, and I got everything worked up. They come up to me and say, well, you're going to Indiana. You ain't going home. I thought, whoa, man, hold on. I'm up here for parole violation, 40 charges. All right, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I get down here, and my buddy's got a therapeutic treatment that he does in the jail. One of my mentors, Derek Harrison, that dude accepted me and allowed me to come in that program. It's a faith-based program. And when I was in there, I come in there full force with a heart for the Lord, ready to make a difference. And I think he's seen it in me. And he invested some time into me. And that's something that I didn't really have too many people that was willing to do, especially all the turmoil and things that I put them through. And through this treatment, I took it serious. I might not have let on like I did a lot of times, but I did take it to heart. It was mostly a recap of that therapeutic community. It was mostly a recap of that CBT program. But most of all, it was Christ-centered. It allowed me to look at my behavior problems, my addiction problems through Christ and through the Word. Give me a whole different mindset on faith-based recovery. I started seeing what that was. I never knew what it was before. And I got it. So, come time I go to court, and they're wanting 5-7 years or something like that on the first one. And I said, well, go ahead and box it up because I ain't doing it. And that was my mindset. I thought, well, the Lord's promised me something better. So I'm praying diligently, like, what are you going to do for me? He says, I got you. Don't worry, I got you. And by this time, the mother of my children quit talking to me altogether. And about a month of me being here in Indiana, I find out she's getting married to another man after 29 years. And my daughter broke the news to me, and it was like, wow. It didn't really hurt me because I knew that God had a greater plan. I knew what God had in store for me. I know he's got something in store for me. I knew it in my heart. That's how I felt. So it really didn't affect me. It did in the flesh a little bit, but it wasn't something that I was going to let deter me all the way and knock me out of my square as it has over the years by putting my joy in somebody else's hands. I found joy in the Lord. I found my strength in the Lord this time, and there wasn't nothing that was going to take that from me. So holding tight to that, I go in front of the judge, and it's like my final pretrial, and they're trying to, I don't know if it was a scare tactic or what, but the judge read off my charges, and he told me, he said, Mr. Byers, if I find you guilty of one or more of these offenses, along with a habitual offender, you're looking at 16 years in prison. And I said, what? Yeah. He said, oh, by the look on your face, I could tell that you wasn't prepared for that. I said, nope, my lawyer never said nothing like that, sir. I said, I got a 5-year plea deal right here, or 7 years. She said that he wanted 7 years or whatever, what it was, what they wanted for me in the penitentiary. So I just looked at her. I said, look, tell that guy over there, tell the prosecutor right there, I'll do 4, do 2 on work release right now. And he just looked at me. She says, he's not going to go for it, Tony. I said, tell him 3, do 18 then. She said, you're pretty adamant. I said, I know the Lord's got something for me. I know he's not going to let me go to jail like that. And my daughter's sitting back there, and my daughter's like, just got her hand over her head, like, here you go again, acting a fool. I didn't. I just put my trust in the Lord. Well, the prosecutor decided he was going to give me a chance. And my record really, I'm not deserving of a chance at all. And so I know it was God. And he said, I agree to the 4, do 2. He said, and I told him, I said, I thank you, sir. I thank you. So they went drawing up the paperwork. Well, I'm a few weeks out of completing this therapeutic treatment program. And I said, hold on, are you guys going to prosecute me today? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, can I ask a favor? I said, what's that? I said, would you mind if I complete this program before you guys send me to work release? And he's like, well, man, if you want to go back to jail for 6 weeks, I don't care. I mean, that's on you. I said, I'm not going to go back to jail. I'm going to prepare myself. I want to be a part of this graduation with these guys. I want to complete something in my life. And I want to be prepared mentally and physically for when I do get here. And he allowed me to do it. So upon graduation and everything, I was asked to speak, and it was something that I started becoming more good at, I guess. Learning how to speak my mind, learning how to be bold in the Lord, and give this testimony as what the Lord's done in my life. And I graduated. I got a sense of fulfillment, man. My kids started looking, they was like, well, okay, Daddy, you completed something. Okay, so what's next? And I told her, I said, well, told my daughter, I said, well, I got to go to work release. When I got over to work release, I didn't have nothing. I had a pair of old rundown shoes, didn't have no jeans, I didn't have nothing. And when I got to work release, my daughter gave me a $20 bill. And with that $20 bill, I took $10 worth of commissary, and I took the other 10 and I put it in my pocket. And when I got put on the work release, didn't have a vehicle, didn't have a ride, didn't have no clothes, didn't have nothing. So I started utilizing some of the resources. I went to the senior center and got some clothes. Went to another ministry here in town, got some clothes. So I started building my wardrobe enough for me to have something to wear. I walked around town. I put applications all around town. Everywhere that I called, anybody that called me back told me that they couldn't hire me because I have too many violent felonies on my record. Now, it's one thing to have drug charges, one thing to have theft charges, but if you got a violent charge on your record, it's difficult to get a job because it's due to their insurance, come to find out. If they had me on the premises, then I'm a threat to their insurance. I'm a liability at that point. And I felt really restricted. I felt like giving up a lot. But as I'm walking down the road, I started seeing these signs, even at these churches, saying, don't give up. If you feel like the Lord is making you wait, do what a waiter does and serve. I was like, whoa, this is just mind blowing. So I'm starting to get talked to by the Lord through signs, and starting, which he says, through signs and wonders. He'll talk to you. And I start reading more, start being more diligent in my prayers, start seeking more. And I got involved in this ministry, Better Days. It was a recovery outreach, faith-based recovery outreach. I started getting engaged with that. And that was with Derek Harrison too. Like I said, my mentor. And man, it was powerful. And start seeing the acceptance, start seeing the crowd and the people that I'm building relationships with. I ended up getting a job with another guy, and I was actually doing a faith-based rehab here in town. It's called Pathway to Damascus. I got an opportunity to go do the remodel project on this. Wasn't making a lot of money, but to me, it was more service work at that point, because I feel like I'm doing something for the Lord. I'm doing something for the community. I'm doing something that's going to help build leadership of men in a godly way in this community. And I thought, well, the Lord's going to reward me for this. Well, then come to find out, the old church that I went to, Higher Praise, had a room addition going on. So I started going up there and doing some work, service work, sort of volunteering my time up there. And I was doing the work down here for the Pathway to Damascus. And was using my skills, my trade. I was using my talents for what they were. And I thought, I'm giving it all to the Lord the whole way. The Lord, I'm giving him glory. I'm giving him praise for everything. Well, 2 months after me being on work release, the mother of my children ends up getting a divorce from this guy. And I thought, well, Lord's made a way. Great. He's got it all figured out. It's just my time. But I'll tell you this, my friend, the devil is a tricky individual. He'll use some of the closest things to get to you and just to keep you in his grasp. And it would seem like a blessing, but it's really just a tactic to keep you bound. So when I seen the divorce take place, I stayed out of it. And then the Lord, so I thought, made a way for me and her to start communicating. She started helping me out, but then I noticed something different. She was back in her addiction. And me being stronger in Christ now, I was able to withhold that. And I was able to help her through her mess. Even though I made a little bit of money, I was still able to help her through her mess and help drag her through her muck and mire. And eventually to where she got back to the altar. And when she got back to the altar, the Lord, it's funny, man, the Lord put a stop to mine and her relationship. And that was weird to me but it was an eye-opener. I'll tell you this much. It was an eye-opener, because she tells me she moved before the Lord did. And I told her, I said, well, the God's not a God of confusion. And I told you I wasn't moving until the Lord told me to. And after 29 years, I had to walk away. And the moment that I walked away and let go of that bondage of putting my joy in somebody else's hands, not that it was just her fault, it was all the bull crap that I put her through. But the moment that I was able to let go of that, I felt so free, so liberated. I was struggling, though. I still had to walk 2.5 miles back to work. I had a fallout with a guy who I was doing the Pathway to Damascus for. So I ended up seeking and searching, and then I got put in the realm of remodeling a house for a guy who is a very wealthy man. So I got put in the realm of $1 million men real quick like. And it was like, I didn't see all this unfolding until later on, because I was so stuck in trying to keep my relationship together, trying to do all this, and I was blinded by it. But I stayed tight to my faith. I stayed tight to what the God had made my path for me. I mean, he made my path straight. So I stayed tight, walking that path diligently, just seeking, still seeking, knowing that he's got something for me. And even though that me and her wasn't working, it kind of fogged me up for a minute, because he promised me restoration of my family. But mine and my kids' relationship was getting better. That's my family. Then I started building this relationship with the guys and girls in the better days. That's my family. I started going to recovery groups. That's my family. I started finding a new family, new ways to find family, new people. Family isn't always blood. Then work release opened the door so we could start going to church. And at that point, right back to home church, right back to the people that never turned their back on me, never looked at me any different. There's police up there. There's so many, the spectrum up there is so wide of people that got such a big heart that they never looked at me any differently. And I felt so accepted. Never did I ever feel accepted like that by walking into this church. And one of the guys up there, he's an ex-cop, Dennis Perkins. That man wrapped me up and said, welcome back, brother. And right then and there, I cried. And wasn't long after that, my pastor, Richie Ware, he's like, he seen when I was struggling trying to rebuild my tools. Because I was a contractor one time with a pretty big outfit. I had 13 guys that worked for me at one time, and I lost it all. Had a nice house, lost it all. Lost everything I ever had on more than one occasion. But this time, my pastor even looked at me and, what do you need, Tony? I said, I don't need nothing. I just need the Lord. I need prayer. Okay. So I steady doing work up there at the church, helping them get the room addition together. And my brother Derek invited us to a revival at his place, PTC Ministries. And I go up there and I'm on fire for the Lord at the time. I'm loving what the Lord's doing in my life. I got so much joy, got so much peace that comes over me. And even despite the fact that me and her wasn't working out, I put all that off to the side and I casted it all on him at his feet. So I think he was teaching me how to let go of everything and be submissive in it all. And as I'm up there was a preacher and evangelist that come into town. And during this revival, and he calls me out the crowd. You in the blue shirt, come here. So I go up, and I grew up Pentecostal, so I know what's coming up. I throw my hands up. I'm waiting on it. And one of the key components in the therapeutic jail treatment that I went through was being transformed by the renewing of your mind. I'll never forget that. Because in order to change things, you got to change your thought process. And I can't change my thought process because I'm so fixated on what I want all the time. But when this man prophesied over me, he said, you're doing great. Stay on the path that you're on. You are being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And he put his hand on me. It felt like somebody knocked my brains out. I felt so lightheaded and dizzy. And he put me back for round 2 and he hit me again and I fell out in the spirit. Never in my life have I ever done that. And when I did, I just felt like I was just in total bliss, like I was weightless on the floor. And I wake up and I got so many brothers that I've known for years that's lived their life for the Lord. I could tell you a bunch of names, man, but I got so many kind, loving men over top of me, putting their hands on me, praying over me. That let me know that I'm on the right path. So I stayed, just fueled my fire some more, stayed diligently pushing, diligently seeking. My pastor, Richie Ware, come up to my job site one day and comes up and says, hey, could you come up here to the church with me? I said, yeah. So he picks me up and he takes me to the church. And I'm struggling with my tools and I'm struggling. I'm only making $600 a week at this point. I'm not, it doesn't get you very far, especially when you pay $200, $160 out a week for, fees. So I'm not really getting too far ahead. I'm trying to save. I'm pinching pennies. I'm doing everything I can. Well, my pastor just starts pulling out tools. Gets me in his office, starts pulling out tools. Here. I'm like, I don't know whether to start crying, laughing, jumping for joy or what. I'm just sitting there astounded. He's like, is this good stuff? And it's all Milwaukee brand, everything that I always had. So he's like God says, he will restore everything once you start serving him. So not only am I got my family being restored, now he's starting to put my job back together. He's starting to put my life back together. So I feel like, okay, now here, I got the tools that I need to do the jobs that need to be done. So now I can step out. The moment that I got that, I could step out and I started doing a little side work, started making extra money, started pushing myself a little more, started doing things. And the $1 million man that I was around, I reached out to him. I said, man, listen, I could use your help. I'm trying to get my license back. 22 years, 7 DUIs in 3 different states. Haven't had a license in 22 years. 28, 29, 30 driving under suspensions. Who knows? I lost track. But they said, well, we'll help you get your license. And I called my boss one day, and he's like, his brother was in the background, said, hey, tell that boy to come up here. He's been on my heart here lately. So he wrote me a $500 check. And then his brother wanted to match the $500 check. My boss, he matched the $500. So I had $1,000. Then I got paid that week, so I had $1,500 at that point. I called, checked about a lawyer, and they told me $2,500 to file the paperwork, and there wasn't no guarantee. The next one told me $2,000, but he could guarantee that I get it. But if he could do it for $2,000, I thought, well, let me check somewhere else. The lawyer that filed my case and tried my case, she said, Tony, I hear that you're doing great. I don't know where she heard it from, but she said, I hear that you're doing great. Normally I charge $17. I'll do it for you for $350. I said, what? So I paid her the $350. And she filed the paperwork. In that process, I got my SR22. I got a non-owner's policy. And it was weird. I pay this insurance for 6 months, and I hold it. And prior to everything, I got a reinstatement fee of $4,125. And I pay this SR22 and this bond and all this stuff. And I get 10 letters at my bunk when I come in to work release one night. 10 letters from the BMV saying lifted suspension, 10 lifted suspensions off of me, stay at suspension because I paid that SR22. And then I get a paper 2 weeks later saying $10 reinstatement fee. So my reinstatement fee went from $4,100 to $10. I don't know. You put it together. The government ain't just going to give you anything. So it's got to be God. You know what I'm saying? Definitely got to be God. And I'm like, well, thank you, Lord. I'm just so grateful, and I'm boasting in the Lord and everything that He's done for me, because I'm starting to see my life start to get put back together. And it's not me. Galatians 2:18 tells you, for if I rebuild what I destroyed, it makes me a transgressor. And I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not a liar. I'm not none of that. I'm not none of that. So me trying to live a godly life now and allowing to submit and surrendering to God is actually working for me. I start seeing God's actions in my life. So therefore, I'm letting God put my life back together, because I can't do it. I showed that I can't do it. 8, 9 different times I showed Him that I can't do it. So I submit and surrender everything to the Lord now. I mean, that's just it. So go to court. Didn't even see the judge. Judge never even came out. He wrote me a specialized driving privileges, because I'm still under suspension until 2026. And give me 2-year specialized driving privileges. I never even seen him, you know what I mean? They told me to come back in that afternoon. And I go in that afternoon to get my paperwork, and there's the judge in behind the clerk's office. He says, Mr. Byers, I hear that you're doing good. He says, I don't care to help anybody who's doing good for themselves. He says, just keep up the good work. I thought, what? Like, never have I had a judge give me a kudos for nothing. Anytime they ever seen me, it was Anthony Dean Byers, put your hands behind your back. Or what are you in here for again? And I thought, well, man, Lord's like really transformed, everything. He took me as a violent, angry ball of mess, and He's creating somebody through this whole process that I still don't know who I'm meant to be, So I keep pushing, keep working, and I'm still like, I'm grateful. At this time, I don't have the money to get me a vehicle, but I'm saving, and I'm making progress at this point. My daughter gets in a spot and needs some help, so I help her pay her rent, and then knocked me down to where I only had like $500. And I ran across a buddy of mine about a week prior to this, and he says, I got a nice truck for you, Tony. He said, but I need $3,500. And I said, okay, well, it's got boxes, racks, big 3/4 ton Chevy, nice, and that's perfect for what I do. And at about this time, I got most of the tools that I need. And he said, about a week after I seen him, he said, you know what? He said, you come up with $2,000. He said, and I'll let you get the truck and you can pay me payments. He said, I actually need some work done at my house, and you can probably work it off. I said, bet, man. So I'm struggling trying to get this. My daughter needed some help with some rent. I give her the money for rent. And I'm sitting with $500 at the beginning of the week. And had a brother offer some help. And they came up and they blessed me with $500. And then another brother and his wife hit me up, and they wanted to bless me, so they blessed me with $500. And then the mother of my children, weirdly enough, says, "I'm gonna give you the $500 that you pay for your daughter's rent back." She said, "I know you need it," and it wasn't nothing that I done. So from Monday till Thursday, I got my $2,000. You know, I'm like, well, praise God. So I got a ride to go pick up my truck. Well, that Friday I got paid, so I had no money to do whatever I needed to do. So put me on the road. Next thing you know, I start pulling a little more side work. Then I'm praying to the Lord, well, let your will be done in my life. Let me just be obedient to what you want. Well, this whole time I've got this whole concept played out in my mind. I really don't want to disclose it because I don't want nobody to steal my idea, but I got this concept of a second chance program that I want to help some of these younger guys get into the field and show them something, teach them something, give them a reason, give them some skilled trade and put some things behind them. So that's what I got conjured up in my mind. And my brother, Derek Harrison, he's helping push me, like a brother's supposed to, man. He pushed me, said, put it together, figure it out, what it is you want to do. And so I'm praying, I'm diligently like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Well, I had a guy offer me a business split, 60-40. I had another guy offer me a 50-50 split. And I'm thinking very seriously about considering it. But the only thing is it ties my money up for so long. I got to wait and play this process. And then I'm praying at the altar one day and the Lord says, you don't have to wait you don't have to. How'd he put it to me? He said, what'd he say? He said, it wasn't anybody else that got you this far. Who are you relying on now? And it kind of opened my eyes for a minute. I'm like, oh, you're right. Why am I looking for help from somebody else? Okay, so I'm just like, man, and it was one of them be still moments, and I hate that. Most people do, you know what I mean? I really do. I can't stay there. Be still and know that I am God. Wait, just wait. So I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like a little kid over there, trying to take off running and knowing that I ain't allowed. So I just kind of calmed down. And through this process, I'm thinking like, okay, well, maybe I could become a recovery coach. So I filed the paperwork and I got rejected on the first one. And then there was an event coming up in Indianapolis and they said it was a free event. So I applied for it. And I got an email back saying that they don't have an opening, that they couldn't let me in. I said, well, Lord, if it's your will, make a way. You've made a way this far for everything else in my life. Just make a way. And this house I was working on, I had to put tile in the kitchen. I only had an altar about 1.5 inches up off the ground, but I hit my knees and prayed. And then about a week later, I get a phone call from this guy. He says, hey, I liked your story. We got one invitation left, and I'd like to extend it to you if you want to come up here to Indianapolis to take these classes and give me the dates and time. I said, oh, yes. I was ecstatic. I started crying. And I seen the Lord's hand in that, making the way for that. So he took a drug addict who was lost in addiction, been impacted as a child by addiction and everything else, and been through all these programs and all this other nonsense, in prison so many times. And I was able to obtain my recovery coach license. That was because God made that way too. Not long after that, got an opportunity. These guys called me and they said, hey, we really liked your work, Tony. And it was the guys who bonded me out from the last time. I done them pretty bad, like through my addiction. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to on the job. They come and bonded me out once, bonded me out again, and I still didn't hold up to it. I ended up leaving them hanging on the job. But these guys said, I've been looking at your page. I've been looking at your Facebook, and they said, we want to give you a chance, but we want your quality of work back, and we see that you're on a good path, and we want to give you the chance, man, if you want to come back to work. I said, yeah. And the woman I got in my life now kind of pushed me, and she encouraged me for that. And I'm thankful for the woman that I got in my life right now. She's a godly woman, man. And it was funny how, it's so funny how once you are able to let go of things, how God blesses you with things that you never thought that you'd ever deserve or ever be a part of, you know? And with her in my corner, like she just kind of helped kick me off and push me off that ledge. Said, "Where's your faith at?" She questioned me. "Where's your faith at? When are you going to take that leap of faith?" And I'm like, "Wow, you're right." So I did. I broke it off with the guy that I was working for that helped me out through all this time. I told him, I'm forever grateful. And we left on good terms. In fact, I'm actually doing a job for him right now under different circumstances. Rather than a salary pay of $600 a week, I'm doing it on a bid job pay. But that isn't even the greatest part of it. The greatest part is the Lord has made a way for me now to have 3 guys that work for me and be able to bless them with $600 a week, what I was making when I was coming up. But not only, it's younger guys who's been impacted by the system and they've been impacted by addiction. And it's just amazing to watch all this unfold. Everything that I had talked about in jail with Derek Harrison and that intensive jail program, everything that I had talked about that, and a lot of things that he had talked about with the up and coming faith-based sober living place that he's putting together and the ministry that he has, everything that we had talked about in faith and just speaking it out has come into play. And it's amazing to watch God's hand unfold your life in front of you in a whole different aspect. I wish I'd have done it 20 years ago. I wish I would have submitted and surrendered 20 years ago, because I found out that you can have faith and you can believe and you can trust all you want, but it doesn't work. It's not enough. Do you really trust and do you really believe if you can't let it go, if you can't submit and if you can't surrender? I've learned that you find victory in the surrender of life. I'm so thankful for what God's done in my life, man. And I'm so excited to see where he's getting ready to take me. But today I stand before you, not a drug addict, not a violent criminal. I'm not going to be bound by those titles anymore in my life. Today I stand before everybody as a redeemed man of God who's trying to do his best to do God's will in my life. Thank you.